Hello everyone, this is Mystic Juicer here, and welcome to another episode of Getting Good at Yomi. This is a really important episode to me, even if it doesn't cover anything to do with gameplay. I wanted to talk for a bit about quick match, or ranked mode, and a little bit about online etiquette. So I promise this isn't going to be some kind of awful soapbox rant about how this or that is rude or you should ascribe to this particular set of behaviors, and I'm not going to carve 10 laws into some tablets and beat people up with them. My hope actually is that people come away from this episode with a broader sense of what etiquette means and how much of our personal histories and even the kinds of gaming communities that we spend most of our time in shape what we see as polite and impolite. Where I do say you should or shouldn't do this, it's going to be stuff that's far from controversial and as close to universal as possible. So case in point, I want to open up with just a blanket call: don't be abusive to players or spectators. So abusive behavior towards other players, insults, speech intended to upset or demean another player doesn't qualify as polite or good etiquette in any way, but I mean, that's obvious. If another player is abusing you, report them to a mod and they'll handle it from here. So in case you have to do this, what you would do is, if you're in-game, either finish it out or quit, whichever you prefer or feel more comfortable with. I'm not positive how this will work on iOS or on Steam. So I'm going to say if you are using Steam on a PC, you can at least use the snipping tool or take a screenshot of the game or chat log to document whatever you're talking about. So just flip to the chat log, take a screenshot. If you spend any time Googling how to take a screenshot, clear everything up. If you are on the browser version, you can actually access the replay if it happened during a game. You click on your name in the top right corner of the screen. It'll take you to your profile page, and you can see a set of games that you've played, the last 10 games essentially. And then if there's a particular game where it happened in, for instance, let's say it was in this relaxing casuals, which is a lie because this is BBB versus Rook and that's anything but relaxing. You can click this keep button, and that's going to ensure that even if you play more games after this point, it's going to keep that replay around. Once you've done that, you can right click on the watch button, copy the link, and then you can post it and message a mod with it. So if you want to message a mod, head to the forums. So fantasystrike.com/forums. Head to the members page. Click on staff members. And then find anybody marked as a super moderator or a moderator and start a private conversation with them. So note their name, head to your inbox, start a new conversation, and then post the link to the replay or the screenshot and just explain what happened, and then they'll handle it from there. So give them some time to take care of this or to get back to you. Probably not an immediate thing. These are all unpaid members of staff, so just be a little patient, but know that they've got your best interests at heart. All that said, I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. The online community for Yomi is incredibly friendly on the whole. The people who've been around for a while and newer players like me are incredibly excited by the influx of people that have joined since the Steam release, and we try to go out of our way to make people feel welcome. We really want people to like this game and stick around and play with us. Yomi draws a lot of different kinds of people: fighting game fans and players, card and board gamers, indie game fans, RTS, FPS gamers, just all kinds of people. Maybe it's obvious, but those groups can have very different ideas of what is and isn't polite. So one of the things that prompted this episode was a thread on the forums way back about whether saying GG was polite or rude. Shit got heated. I was shocked. I mean, to my mind, of course you say GG after every round. How could you not? It's so rude not to say anything. That was kind of my base opinion before reading the thread. But there was real diversity of opinion on this. Some people thought GG was always polite if it was said after a match, and should be said after every match without exception. Some people argued that it was the person who lost that set the tone, and could either say GG, in which case the winner must respond in kind, or they could choose not to say it, in which case the winner better not say it. Some people felt quite strongly that saying GG at all was always insulting, that abbreviating good game came across as dismissive and condescending, and that opponents should say nothing at all. Or at least, if they do say something, they should type out like a full sentence, like good games, if not something longer. So I'm going to stop there, but I just wanted to make the point that there were a ton of different opinions on one of the more basic aspects of how do you respectfully show you're grateful for a match to an opponent. And how do you do that if you won the match, or you felt the match couldn't accurately be described as a good game. So the only thing that was universally agreed on is that saying GG before one of the players was dead was very insulting. So definitely don't do that. This is basically always considered to be saying something like, quit now, you're wasting my time. So this brings us to this episode. When I was thinking about writing this up, I knew right away I wanted to address the topic of etiquette, and emphatically not to come down on one side of the GG debate, or debates like that. Instead, I want to remind everyone, including myself, because I'm human, I forget these things too, that etiquette is cultural. If you're a StarCraft or RTS player, then GG is something the loser of a match says to acknowledge his opponent's victory. If you're a fighting game player, you might shake hands or something before a match, but after the match, it depends on how both players feel about how it went down, whether there's any exchange at all. Maybe you just unplug your controller and walk away. Point is, these rules aren't written in stone anywhere. I've encountered players who asked after the 4th game in our set what GG meant. I'm sure I've played people who didn't speak English at all, or who were playing on iOS where typing can be a hassle, or who are shy, or just don't feel like talking. The point is that I can't know what my opponent is going to think is polite or rude, and neither can they read my mind, or know what gaming culture I came from that informs how I act online. So apply a principle of charity liberally and often. Give your opponent the benefit of the doubt, whether they say something or nothing, that they're showing you respect in their culture, or at least not actively trying to disrespect you. Err on the side of assuming no ill intent, or of assuming a misunderstanding, or language barrier, or technical issues when you interpret someone's behavior. Maybe your opponent's 13 and excitable or new to gaming. Maybe your opponent's using their very precious and limited free time to play some matches and doesn't want to talk because it slows down gameplay, or they're slow typers. Maybe they have difficulty reading social cues, which can be even more difficult over text. So start from a position of assuming there's no ill intent, just a difference of perspective. Etiquette is about making your guest or host feel comfortable. Use that to guide your behavior and assume others are doing so as well, where reasonable. So if you've spent any time at all watching my videos, you know or strongly suspect that I'm a chatty Cathy. I play on a PC, so I have a keyboard, and I like to chat with my opponent, especially if I know them. I'm not going to write a novel, but I'll say hi, wish people good luck, have fun, ooh and ah if I get hit with something huge. I like to say GG after every match. I might chat with spectators that drop in to watch. Some people aren't into that. So again, principle of charity. If I don't get any response, I eventually stop. Or if my opponent says something like, iOS can't type, or, rather not talk, let's just play, I'm cool with that. Generally, if your opponent greets you, greet them back, and then your obligations for chatting are fulfilled. Extend your opponents the same courtesy. So if someone tells you they'd rather not chat, respect that request. Not everyone expresses their enthusiasm the same way. And some people might feel obligated to respond, but run into issues on medium timer or fast timer. Now they might feel like they have to choose between playing the game well or being impolite. But let's not put people in that position. Communication and clarification are always in style. Be willing to be generous to the people you're playing with. Obviously, that covers don't trash talk your opponent, especially if you don't know each other. Tone is really hard to communicate over the internet, and a catty comment that would be perfectly fine to say over a card game in real life can come across as really shitty online, especially to a stranger. So there's, tons of people that I've played with for over a year now that I get along really well with, so they know if I'm giving them shit in quick match or something, that it's meant in jest. That's not a blanket, oh, okay, it's just accepted that you can just be shitty to your opponent and they're supposed to get that it's a joke. So, okay, I've rambled on about etiquette for a little while now. What does that have to do with quick match? So, for most people who are playing the game, ranked mode is likely the most common way you play matches, and the most common way you're going to interact with other players. If you're playing with a specific friend, you're playing custom games, right? But you have to set that up individually. Custom games or casuals don't count for any points. They don't increase or decrease people's ranks, no matter the outcome. But if you're just looking for matches, you want to play some games, you're probably hitting quick match and seeing who shows up. So you're being paired with other people you may not know, don't have any history with them most of the time unless you've hung around for a while. So there's, etiquette is important in that context. If you're playing quick match, it's a little bit more intense than casuals. Once you're out of the student ranks, your losses are going to decrease your rank. Even though that doesn't really mean anything, it feels like there's more on the line in quick match. Those internet points you worked hard to gain can be taken from you. So things are a little bit more intense. Keep the principle of charity in mind when you're there. Make it as pleasant an experience for the people you're playing against as you can. There's also some technical and cultural things about quick match that you might not know about. So once you're actually in the lobby in quick match, if someone joins the lobby and you quit, you'll be assigned a loss. If I set up a custom game for now. So once you're at this screen and you've selected your character, if somebody else jumps in, then that's going to be a lot, and you quit, that's going to count as a loss against you in quick match. That feature is there to discourage people from avoiding opponents that are stronger than them or which give them trouble without taking some kind of negative penalty. Same thing happens if you concede or quit a match. You're assigned a loss, again, to avoid people potentially quitting out of matches with stronger opponents. If you get disconnected for some reason, the player who stays behind can choose to declare a win for themselves after a certain amount of time has passed. I think it's 90 seconds. Some people will wait around to see if you come back, but others won't. Remember, people are playing this game to have fun. They may just want to unwind and play a bunch of matches, so don't take it too hard if you get disconnected and they take the win. They have no way of knowing if you just quit, or how long it would take you to come back online, or if you'd come back at all. Maybe you had a power outage. It's not reasonable to expect that some random person that you're playing against is just going to stick around for a while. Unlike in a tournament where typically only the loser of a fight gets to switch characters, again, depending on tournament rules, but that's kind of the standard counterpicking setup. Both players in quick match can choose to rematch as different characters after every game. So if you just lost and went to counterpick your opponent, it might feel really unfair to see that they've switched to someone else, especially if you're used to tournament play. Remember, principle of charity. Maybe they ran out of tokens or gold and had to switch. Maybe they're trying out some new characters, trying to find one they click with. They're just, starting the game. Maybe they're playing with a friend and trading off turns. They might even just be tired of playing the same character and want to try something new. None of that is, switching characters after every match is not prohibited in any way, either mechanically by the quick match lobby, or just generally culturally. If you want to face their other character, you can ask if they'd be willing to switch back. Or better yet, maybe ask them if they'd like to play some custom matches in the previous matchup if you want to get some practice. They can certainly say no, of course, but there's no harm in asking politely. Ranked matches, quick match matches, will end after 5 games no matter what the record is. So unlike a best of 5 in tournament, where a set can end in 3-0, quick match will always give you the option to rematch until 5 games have been played. Some people really like to play out all 5 games. Some people really like to play one game and then move on and play a different player or character. There's nothing that says you have to play out all 5. You want to play a variety of characters and opponents, by all means. I will note though, especially if you have plans to play in tournaments, it can be very good practice to play multiple games against the same opponent. So after all, Yomi is about learning how your opponent thinks and makes choices, so playing longer sets is a good exercise in figuring out how to adjust to your opponent's playstyle, and then adjust to your opponent's adjustment to your playstyle. Even if you don't intend to play in tournaments, that can be a really valuable and really fun and skill testing. But let's not judge each other and get mad at each other because we played too few or too many games. Live and let live. Do note, though, if you drop out after 1 or 2 games, especially if not too many people are playing in quick match, you might just get matched with the same person again, which can be a little awkward when it happens. If you prefer to avoid this, after you exit from a match, take 30 seconds or so, grab a drink or something, before you hit the quick match button again. That's going to minimize that awkward situation where you played 1 or 2 games against someone, quit, went back into quick match, and immediately get joined with them. I do want to touch on, since I've already sort of brushed up against the subject, tournament and spectator etiquette. Generally, same concepts apply. Tournament matches, especially finals, can draw really big crowds. Last night for just a round 1 International Yomi League match, we had, I think it was 20 people in spectator chat, which is awesome. Usually, players will allow spectators to chat, though this is something that can be disabled by the players at the start of the match. It's usually up to player preference. So generally, these kind of matches can get pretty raucous. People lose their minds when someone connects with a super or loses a critical combat. There may be all caps typing and general comments from the peanut gallery. It's a quote-unquote hype environment. If players have allowed chatting, that means they've accepted that people are going to go a little nuts. So in other words, feel free to join in the fun. It goes without saying that you shouldn't privately message one or the other player, especially not to coach them or offer advice. Don't do that even if you're typing it out in main chat. So don't offer advice or coach or anything in the chat. It's a tournament situation. Participants are on their own. They make the decisions, they hold the L or claim the W. If in doubt, don't talk about current combat reveals. Don't talk about known information. So stuff like, oh, he's still holding 2 aces, or, aha, yeah, great, bluffing when you've already played 2 jokers, that kind of stuff. It might seem obvious to you, but in a tense tournament match, you can miss obvious things sometimes. And one of the marks of better players is that they can keep a cool head and catch the obvious things in high-pressure situations. Don't put your 2 cents in about that kind of stuff. It goes without saying that this goes double when a room has decided to allow spectators to see the player's hands. Don't share this information or joke about this information. It's a matter of trust that spectators will not abuse hands being turned on in the rare instances where it happens. It's exciting. You get to see another, usually high-level tournament player, see their hand, see what kind of decisions they make in different situations. Take this as a learning opportunity. Still be hype about the match, absolutely, but don't spoil this. So in these kinds of situations, emoticons, oohs, ahs, that kind of stuff is probably the safest thing you can type. So if you don't feel comfortable about what is or isn't allowed, stick with that stuff. But the general principle is, don't type anything that's going to affect decision making in the game. Don't share anything that's going to potentially influence a decision from one or the other player. So this principle about coaching actually applies to spectating quick matches and casuals too. There may not be anything on the line, really, in a quick match, but generally, unless you're asked for advice, or the room is specifically marked as a teaching or learning room, don't offer advice. If you feel like you might be able to help a new player, or a player who's playing your main, for instance, you can ask them after a match if they'd like any comments, but you can imagine that can depend on a lot of factors. Well, I'm not saying don't do it, but tread carefully. Be tactful if you're going to ask if someone would like some advice. Chatting a lot as a spectator in quick matches is a little less common. A few people play in tournaments, and they accept, or may even enjoy, having lots of people watch and get nuts. But keep in mind that quick match is for everyone, including shy players, or players that just want to play and don't want to be talked to or talk. Think of it like you're walking by and see some people playing chess. They might be swapping pieces and chuckling and taking breaks to tell stories, or they might be really focused and deep in concentration. And online, you can't tell at a glance which of those is the case. So play it by ear, or just ask if chatting would bother them before you do anything. Anyway, back to tournament games. If you're chatting in a tournament event, avoid writing out really long thoughts or continuously spamming the chat. So don't dominate chat. You're not the only one at the show. Keep your comments to the events of the fight, whether it's the grand finals or the first round. A tournament fight's not the right time to discuss matchup numbers, catch up with your friends, or discuss the last episode of Game of Thrones. Think of it like kind of live theater rules. So applaud, gasp, grumble, that's fine. Just don't annoy or distract your fellow spectators or the performers. From the other perspective, again, don't assume that people are doing it on purpose. If you're playing an important set, remember, you can pause the game if you need to, let the audience know if they're getting off topic or you'd like them to rein it in a little bit. People will typically respond with respect if you offer them respect first. If you don't want to call out someone specific in chat, you can also send them a private message or whisper through chat. Make sure the game is paused, but the way to send a whisper is to type either /PM or /W or /MSG, then leave a space, write out the name of the person you want to message, replacing any spaces in their name with underscores, leave another space, and then write out the message. So for instance, if I wanted to private message Mystic Deadman here, I could do PM Mystic Deadman and then my message. You can also do that by replacing the PM with /W or /MSG. If someone has whispered you, a quick way to reply to them is just to type /R. Then you don't have to put their name in, you can just respond to them immediately, and it's going to go to the last person who sent you a private message. So if a lot of people are messaging you, and it's switching back and forth, so keep an eye on who you're responding to, because /R won't indicate that. But it can be a good way of chatting back and forth. Thanks again for listening. Again, when in doubt, or if somebody is annoying you, apply the principle of charity first. Assume the person is being respectful, or is at least not being disrespectful. They play or engage in ways that seem odd to you. Abusive behavior is something else and should be reported to a mod. I promise we'll get back to episodes about improving gameplay, but I thought this was an important topic to address. There's a lot of shades of gray here. I hope that's come across in how I've talked about this subject. If you have any comments or questions, please have at it, either here in the video or message me on fantasystrike.com. If you think I got something wrong or there's something you want to talk about, you can leave me a message here or start a thread on fantasystrike.com in the Yomi subforum. There's a lot of good discussion going on there all the time. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Getting Good at Yomi. If you have any comments, any feedback, let me know. Otherwise, I'm Mystic Juicer, and as always, enjoy yourself some Yomi.